All right, so Vietnam, why was it fought? What were its features? And we just talked about do now questions. So here we go. All right, I'll give you a second. All right, so the important vocab we gave you yesterday is this term proxy war. So we said that a proxy war is really just a war that is fought by two countries who are really symbolizing a larger conflict. So the larger conflict is really U.S. versus USSR, or NATO versus Warsaw Pact, however you want to look at it, in the form of the Cold War. And the two countries that are actually going to war in their places are North Vietnam and South Vietnam. So in this is very similar to the Korean War, with in principle and kind of an allegiance, right? Northern Vietnam is backed by the Soviet Union; they're communist, and Southern Vietnam is backed by the U.S. and they are capitalist and democratic. So this is another one of those proxy wars fought in the name of the domino theory. The principal difference here between the Korean War and the Vietnam War is the presence of, well, amongst other things, Viet Cong, VC, supporters of communist northern Vietnam that are located in isolated pockets of southern Vietnam. Okay, so this makes for a tricky situation. In Korea, the communists were in the north, the capitalist Democrats were in the south. Everybody shoot at each other. It's easy to figure out. Vietnam becomes tricky because it's not north versus south only. It's north versus south, and also watch for Viet Cong sneaking up behind you because there's pockets of them around in southern Vietnam also. It made for a very, very tricky situation. Okay, so this kind of blurred the lines of traditional warfare in the sense that it is not readily evident who is on what side. It takes some figuring out. And that makes it particularly difficult to fight this war, amongst other reasons. All right, I'll give you a second here. I think this is the last slide. All right, so there's a couple of factors that make the Vietnam War particularly challenging for the United States. First of all, geography, okay? And specifically topography. What kinds of landforms can be found there? Mountains and dense jungle make it very, very difficult for the U.S. The U.S. has a long history of fighting wars in like northern European plains, World War I and II, right? The American frontier in the case of the Civil War, etc. So they are built and well versed in fighting in those kinds of geographic areas. But once you drop them into the jungle, all those strategies and tactics go out the door because you can't roll tanks through the jungle. It just doesn't work that way. So we had built the American war machine to fight a certain kind of war. And that certain kind of war was very, very different from the war that the United States would find themselves in Vietnam. And it was a whole lot of kind of learning as you go with regard to conducting this kind of warfare for the United States. So the mountains and dense jungle made it especially difficult. Strategies and tactics made it difficult also. This is the birth of guerrilla warfare. Well, not the birth, but it's really the first time that we see guerrilla warfare being used to any great success. And it is a strategy used most commonly by the Viet Cong. Again, the Viet Cong are those supporters of the northern Vietnamese communists that are in isolated pockets in the south. And essentially, guerrilla warfare is a sneak attack, hit and run kind of strategy. So basically, the way it works is your unit is on patrol and you decide to camp for the night. Everyone rests their rifles up against a tree and closes their eyes for a few minutes with a couple of people taking watch. All of a sudden, these people run out of the jungle, everyone empties their clips, and they run away. And by the time everyone could even wake up and tie their boots and grab their guns, the enemy has disappeared back into the jungle. So this particular strategy, this hit and run kind of strategy, was very, very difficult for the U.S. to defend against, and it was not something that they had seen before. So they had particularly big trouble fighting this kind of war. So what do? Well, if the enemy is hiding out in the jungle, just eliminate the jungle. Take away their hiding spot. So they used what's called napalm. Napalm is essentially liquid fire. Let's see if we can show off what it looks like. Ooh, that's theater mode. That's exciting. All right. So here we go. So that's what essentially napalm looks like. Now, in that video clip, that's the Americans using napalm kind of directly against the enemy. But the more common usage of napalm was to get rid of all the, the get rid of the enemy and get rid of their hiding spots also. The other thing that was used to get rid of the jungle essentially is what's called Agent Orange. Agent Orange was a herbicide, which is basically a poison for plants. And the idea is that if we dump a bunch of this chemical throughout the jungle, it will eliminate all the tree cover, and then the enemy will not have anywhere to hide, and it'll be a lot easier to fight that war. Now, Agent Orange is tricky because Agent Orange just kills plants. It doesn't know the difference between trees and a field of rice or wheat. So if you drop it on, agriculture food stuff, it's going to destroy that the same way it would destroy the jungle, for example. So the U.S. is walking a fine line with the use of Agent Orange, because while they claim its intent is to defoliate, quote unquote, the landscape, it can be used to eradicate food supply also and starve out the enemy. And that is, that's a slippery slope ethically when it comes to fighting warfare. If you want to apply ethics to warfare, that's a reasonable place to do it.